Springboks versus Wallabies, guys. Ellis Park, can't wait. It's going to be an absolute cracking game of rugby. Guys, in this video, I'm going to be covering two main areas, so I'll give you sort of my preview and predictions of both sides. I think some insights as to some challenges or how I think both teams, the Wallabies and the Springboks, will look to play in this game. And then, stick around till the end and I'll give you my match prediction of how I think this game will go and the predicted winner between the Wallabies and the Springboks at Ellis Park on the 16th of August. So firstly, starting off with the Springboks, so a couple of key talking points there, and let me know your thoughts on this down below. I'll be interested to see some of the Springbok selections, particularly the likes of a Sasha Feinberg or a Andre Pollard or Bongi Mnambi or Malcolm Marx. Particularly, it'll be interesting, the likes of Sasha Feinberg, I think probably on form. He's probably the best first five in the world at the moment on form. You see the way he plays in the European competition. His skill set is just unbelievable. His kicking, the raw speed he has, his defense, his game management, the way he sees the game. He's definitely on form, if not one of the best players in the world at first five. So, will they go with him? Will they roll the dice, or will they go for the tried and tested Andre Pollard? Andre Pollard is, again, another class player. Ice running through his veins. How many kicks has he got in the last 5-10 minutes to win the game for the Springboks? And particularly his leadership and game management is particularly effective. I imagine they'll probably, subject to injuries, but they'll probably start with Bongi Mnambi and Malcolm Marx. I don't know who they'll start with, but those would probably be the two hookers they go with. It'd be interesting, maybe Malcolm Marx comes off the bench as part of the bomb squad, but certainly those hookers are class. The set piece work they do, the power that they bring to that Springbok forward pack. That'll be interesting to see the combinations they go with there as well from selection wise. And then, what's happening with Sia Khaleesi's recovery? Is he going to be out injured for this series, or is he going to be likely back and fit and ready to go? That's another really interesting scenario. And, if Sia Khaleesi is out injured, who will step up and be the captain of the Springboks? Potentially a couple of names come to me, the likes of an Eben Etzebeth, over 100 tests, an absolute world-class lock. Potentially Andre Pollard, maybe Sasha Feinberg will drop to the bench and Andre Pollard needs to start and maybe he needs to captain the side. Or the likes of even a Damien Dialende is a name that I've heard is being floated around for leadership-wise. Could they pull him out to be captain of the Springboks? But it'll be interesting to see who they go with from a leadership perspective. I think finally the interesting thing with the Springboks as well is the Ellis Park advantage. So again, I'm interested to hear you guys' thoughts. Is it actually an advantage in modern test rugby? Certainly it's that altitude, and you saw last year with the All Blacks versus Springboks game and that test one there. The All Blacks, they came out to a good start, but certainly that altitude, maybe the fitness of the All Blacks got exposed a bit, and obviously the Springbok came back and won that game in the end against the All Blacks. But certainly, is this going to be an advantage to the Springboks, or is it more neutral and doesn't really benefit the Springboks at modern rugby with the fitness that these players have? I think one challenge there, though, will definitely be, assuming Tom Lynagh starts for the Wallabies, I think the territory game will probably favour the Springboks. A young fly half like Tom Lynagh playing at altitude at Ellis Park, that's going to be a tough ask for him. So that'll be interesting. Guys, if you're enjoying the content, hit the subscribe button, show some support for the channel, chuck some banter down below about the Wallabies versus Springboks and even other rugby championship games we've got coming up. Can't wait. It's going to be an awesome rugby championship, isn't it, guys? To the Wallabies, a couple of interesting talking points there. So the big one, I think, is Joe Schmidt's influence. So look, it's hard to know how much of an influence he will have on this Wallabies side. Certainly towards the end of 2024, you started to see that influence. And look, I would say between Joe Schmidt and Rusty Erasmus, probably at the moment on form, arguably, with results and etc., the way the performances their sides have put out, they're probably the two of the best coaches in the world, and that's significant at test match level. The thing about Joe Schmidt, though, is he's just so clinical and accurate. So he's like a technician. He'll analyse the Springboks, and he'll have, I'm sure he'll have a couple of plays there that will test the Springboks, no doubt. And he'll certainly have some real smarts about, like, he knows that physicality is coming from the Springboks, but I'm sure Joe Schmidt will have some pretty clever tactics to counteract that. So, look, it'll be interesting. And, look, obviously last night, coming off a test series loss to the Lions, that would have really hurt the Wallabies. You know, it wasn't much of it. And certainly I think that test one, that the Wallabies were well underdone against the Lions. But test two, look, they showed what they can do. And for the Wallabies to lose against the British and Irish Lions in Test 2 by 3 points against the best of, 4 quality rugby nations, the Wallabies won't be easy beats in this test, I'm sure. I think the other interesting thing with Joe Schmidt will be, what will be his game plan? I definitely don't think the Wallabies are going to take on the Springboks physically up the middle. They won't win the game if they do that against probably the strongest physical side in the world in the Springboks. But how will they counteract the line speed, etc., from the Springboks? What are they going to do with their plays to get the ball wide, and or they use their kicking game to move the ball into space? How are they going to really take the Springboks on? And then conversely, how are they going to counteract the Springboks with their muscle game up front, and they're kicking the territory, the high ball game, or when it's on, the Springboks go wide and execute some good plays. So, yeah, interested to see their game plan from the Wallabies there. The playmaking combinations, again, selections will be really interesting for the Wallabies, particularly to counteract that brutal Springboks rush defence. Will they go with the likes of a Tate McDermott and Tom Lennard at 9-10 or another combination? Even the loose forwards will be interesting. Probably Bob Valentini, Fraser McWright and Harry Wilson, I would imagine, as their loose forward starting combination. But again, that'll be quite interesting there, and particularly that forward pack from the Wallabies, the selections they have there is going to be absolutely crucial. Like, they need to power up against that Springbok forward pack to match them. And then I think the final thing I'd say as well is, look, there's going to be a lot of talk before this game. I'm imagining that the TAB will probably predict that the Springboks to win this by 20, 25, even 30 points, I imagine. But I think it'll be a lot closer than that. And the one thing I'd say about the Wallabies is, they're going through a development phase, but, like an Australasian thing, the Aussies and the Kiwis, they frickin' love sport, and they won't care that they're the underdogs to this game. They'll come out, Ellis Park, awesome stadium, playing in South Africa. How good. The Wallabies will come out to play and really try and knock over the Springboks. So I think that's another important fact to note. Like, don't underestimate the Wallabies. Finally, I think when it comes to the game, how do I see it sort of going? Look, probably there's a few people that are going to think I'm crazy, but I actually think that first half will be quite close. I think Joe Schmidt, he'll have some cunning tactics. I think that Wallabies forward pack, at least for the first half, will muscle up quite well against the Springboks. I actually think the Wallabies will have a couple of good plays as well, especially with a Joseph Suaalii in their back line. Like, he's a world-class centre, and you saw some of his performance in that Test 2 against the British and Irish Lions. I think the Wallabies will score a couple of tries in that first half and probably likely be leading maybe by 5 or 10 points at half-time against the Springboks, which will surprise a few people. I think that second half, again, it'll be close, but I think the forward pack of the Springboks with the bomb squad coming on, that tighten up things, maybe some rolling mauls, especially that territory game. I think that's going to be really tough for the Wallabies to match up against. And so in the end, I'm predicting the Springboks to win against the Wallabies at Ellis Park by 6 points. Let me know your thoughts. I know that's probably much closer than a lot of people think, but again, what I say is this is a Joe Schmidt Wallabies side, and you just look to how close they were winning that Test 2 against the British and Irish Lions, and I think this will be closer than people think. So, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button, chuck some more banter down about the Rugby Championship, the Springboks, the Wallabies, etc. And hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Cheers.